No sound echoed in the hall of final judgment, not the whispers of the crowd, not the tapping of claws or talons, not even the mechanical breath of the tribunal's death machine. Just silence. Commander Jace Rourke stood on the judgment slab, arms spread wide, locked in molecular stasis cuff that glowed like blue fire around his wrists. He wasn't struggling. He wasn't pleading. He just stared at the 33 justices seated in the arc above him, his eyes unwavering, even as blood ran from his lip, trailing down his neck like a red thread unraveling from a man already sewn shut. The Galactic Tribunal, keepers of peace, rulers of interstellar law, and executioners of entire civilizations, looked down upon him as if he were nothing but a rat in a sterile cage. And to them, he was a human, a soldier, a killer. The lead judge, Lord Wrestle, whose body hovered in a containment sphere filled with shimmering spores, spoke in a voice that felt like 100 whispering insects crawling across flesh. Commander Jace Rourke of Earth, you stand convicted of crimes against the laws of unity. You interfered in the neutral war zone of Glies 442b. You deployed plasma on unarmed non-combatants. You disobeyed a direct order to withdraw. Jace didn't respond. His jaw was locked shut. The lower half of his face was bruised, where the pre-trial interrogators had tried to break more than just his bones. We are not monsters, Wrestle continued, oily and proud. We offered you representation. We offered you a voice. Jace raised his chin slightly. You gagged me. A flicker, just a flicker. Around the room, several justices shifted, feathers rustling, shells hardening, cybernetic eyes focusing. The humans were always so defiant, but that was about to end. Earth was warned, hissed Wrestle. The Treaty of Celestis forbids interference in disputed zones. Earth is not above judgment. There was a murmur from the human delegation in the gallery, ambassadors, diplomats, officials. The Earth Coalition was here in full force. Except one, the final seat, far at the end of the bench, shadowed, unlit, remained occupied by a figure cloaked in red. No insignia, no nameplate, no voice. They hadn't spoken once during the 3-day trial. The verdict took 30 seconds to deliver. By unanimous decision of the tribunal, you are sentenced to atomic disintegration, effective immediately. A scream tore loose from someone in the gallery. A woman, Jace's sister, maybe, a scientist. She lunged forward, only to be caught by a pair of 6-limbed guards, dragged backward into silence. Jace exhaled, not in fear, in peace. Make it fast, he muttered. The execution beam powered up, a hiss like thunder in a sealed tomb. The slab glowed white-hot. And then, white, blinding, perfect white. And silence, again, when it ended. There was nothing left but a blackened outline scorched into the slab, and a few fragments of dog tags melted into the surface. The tribunal recessed. No press conference. No explanation. No apology. Earth's delegation stood in silence, except the figure in red. They remained seated. And then, slowly, deliberately, they stood, they turned, and they walked out. 3 hours later, the Martian silence. The first anomaly hit Earth's system within 3 hours of the execution. Mars went dark. Not communication lost dark. Gone. Terraforming satellites offline. Biosignature scans empty. Data relays vaporized. Recon probe sent into Martian orbit found nothing but ashes floating through the upper stratosphere, and deep beneath the crust, where once a military base had been hidden, a tunnel had been carved by something hotter than any known energy weapon, something that barred straight through 27 layers of defense. No survivors. No wreckage. No warning. Just 3 words, scorched into the tribunal's orbital relay, one of their own installations. You broke it. The shockwave across stars. Panic struck the galactic core. The tribunal scrambled to identify the attacker. Pirates? A black hole weapon? Rogue AI? But Earth? Earth said nothing. Its transmissions remained routine. Its leadership offered condolences for the loss of Mars, labeling it a cosmic catastrophe of unknown origin. But in the darkest channels of the galactic underweb, whispers began. One word passed through encrypted comms like poison through a bloodstream. Executioner. Who was he? No files. No birth record. No face in the system. Just Stories, a ghost created by Earth's Black Operations Division, trained in anti-PSY warfare, immune to standard mind probes. A man who had once assassinated a warlord on a Dyson ring and escaped on foot. Some said he had no name. Others said he was Earth's answer to the Tribunal's arrogance. A weapon wrapped in skin. The kind of man you didn't unleash unless you expected to burn. Earth hadn't sent a protest. Earth hadn't declared war. Earth had sent him. Returned to the slab. The Tribunal returned to Celestis Prime in full force. Defenses were doubled. Triple-shielded plasma walls. Psychic alarm fields. Guardian automatons programmed with anti-human protocols. They were not afraid, they claimed. They were prepared. But beneath the surface, in the spires of their sky palaces, in the corners of their war councils, one word was on every tongue. Why? Why had Earth stayed silent? Why hadn't they negotiated? Why hadn't they? A message arrived on every tribunal interface simultaneously. No origin, no encryption, just a black screen. And a single sentence, typed in red, 1 for 1. Judgment must be balanced. Then static, then silence, then a scream from deep within the subcourt archives. A judge, glass-skinned, immortal, untouchable, was found peeled open, its neural core pulsing on the wall like a heart ripped from a god. Carved into the floor beneath it, written in the judge's own lifeblood, was a name. Rook. They said no one had ever escaped a red cell. Red cells weren't prisons. They were erasers, unlisted black site void pits hidden inside moons, orbiting dead stars, forgotten by even the ones who built them. The Tribunal didn't advertise them. They didn't need to. Once you were sent to a red cell, you were gone. History snapped its book shut and moved on. So when the Tribunal found Cell RX-9 torn open, walls melted from the inside, guards shredded, neural cores fried, they didn't believe the report until they saw the footage. 17 seconds of corrupted video, frame skip, distortion, then a shape crouched in the darkness, humanoid, bare-chested, breathing like a beast, and then motion, too fast, too deliberate. The security AI registered a heat signature where none should be. The lights failed. Guards began screaming into comms, cut short, and when the auto turrets finally activated, it was too late. One shot fired. It ricocheted off the wall. Then a single phrase transmitted from the control deck's dead man switch, scrawled in someone's blood. Judgment is dead. After that, the feeds went black. The Tribunal panicked. Silently. Not publicly. No one ever saw a god tremble, but behind closed vaults, they did, because whoever had breached Red Cell IX-9 hadn't just escaped. They had hunted. They had entered a prison built to erase legends, and walked out with one. It started small. A smuggler ring near the edge of Delta Orion reported a figure boarding a private shuttle in the middle of a high-speed warp jump. From the outside, no boarding signal, no entry code, just a thump, then screams, then silence. Later, when the ship was recovered, every smuggler was dead, flayed, impaled, dismembered. But untouched were two things: a set of Earth ID tags and a data drive containing security footage. The footage showed him, the executioner. No armor, no helmet, just a human-shaped shadow moving through metal like it was paper. In one hand, a knife made of something not registered in any galactic database. In the other, nothing. He didn't speak. He didn't hesitate. He didn't miss. And when he was done, he walked to the pilot seat, accessed the navlogs, and stared at the star map. 3 Tribunal signatures pulsed in red. He picked one, and the ship detonated minutes later, on purpose. No escape pod, no trail, no transmission, just absence. A week later, the sky over Kedrix 7 turned to ash. Kedrix wasn't a military outpost. It was a cultural sanctuary, one of the Tribunal's oldest. A monument to peace, diplomacy, and interstellar unity. Exactly why he hit it. He came through the subterranean vents, using tech so advanced that even the local AI thought it was part of their security system. Cameras didn't register him. Sensors misfired. Automated drones didn't react. By the time the Tribunal's on-world representatives realized someone was in the sanctum, it was too late. 13 of their priests, Ancient beings who had brokered peace between species older than Earth's sun were found nailed to the spires, their lifeblood drawn into a symbol burned into the sacred floor. Scales hash. Not justice. Not revenge. Balance. He was sending a message. You took one of ours. We're taking the scales. It wasn't just violence. It was surgical. Every kill. Every strike. Every infiltration. He never left witnesses. Never missed targets. He didn't blow up planets. He didn't declare war. He didn't need to. The tribunal had sentenced a man they thought was disposable. A pawn. A soldier with scars, anger, and a record. Someone they assumed Earth would give up to protect peace. But they'd made one mistake. They thought Jace Rourke was alone. He wasn't. He had a handler. A shadow. A myth wrapped in skin. The executioner wasn't born. He was triggered. He had been waiting. In a hidden chamber beneath Europa's ice, a meeting was held. Secret. Unrecorded. 6 tribunal species sat in a circle, bodies trembling. A hologram flickered between them, a blurry image of the executioner stepping out of a blast crater with a severed head in one hand and fire in his eyes. "His not rogue," one of the judges said, his voice shaking. "His aimed, targeted, controlled." "No, worse," said another. "His trusted." The room fell into silence. Then, finally, from the darkness at the far end, came a voice they hadn't heard in centuries. Old, cold, mechanical. Send the time more. Gasps. Even mentioning it was dangerous. The more isn't tested, one protested. It could collapse 12 systems. And if we don't use it, the voice asked, flatly, he will erase us first. The executioner didn't hide. He walked into the maw of the tribunal itself, Celestis Prime, uninvited, unannounced. He arrived not in a ship, but in a full capsule, dropped from subspace without warning. Impact cratered the Grand Plaza. Security bots moved in. Drones targeted. Sirens screamed. He stepped out of the smoke, dragging a body behind him, one of their top enforcers. Still breathing. Barely. He let the body go, then raised both hands, and spoke. His first words, since it began. Try it. Send your more. Send your gods. Your fleets. Your rules. Then dig your graves. They attacked. Everything. Pulse cannons. Gravity beams. Psychic tearworms. He moved through them like shadow made solid. He danced between light. He killed like an artist carving a masterpiece from bone and metal. 3 minutes in, 8 to 9 guards were dead. He reached the tribunal chamber. The justices had already fled. He didn't chase them. He just stepped into the center of the room and dropped something. A box. It opened. Dog tags. Jaces. Then a hologram lit the room, pre-recorded, triggered by the movement. Jace's face. Beaten. Bloody. Alive. A video recorded the night before his execution. If you're seeing this, they killed me. Doesn't matter what they told you. I didn't start the war. I tried to stop it. I tried to save their kids. They're civilians. They wanted blood, and I wouldn't give it. So now, you'll give them yours. The hologram faded. The executioner looked up and smiled. Just once. And then detonated a pulse beacon that blinded every sensor on the planet. When vision returned, he was gone. But every tribunal relay, station, and satellite received one final message. Text only. Balance is owed. Payment has begun. Pray you die before I find you. The galaxy changed that day. The tribunal no longer ruled from on high. They hid. They whispered. They locked themselves in fortresses and prayed the shadows stayed quiet. Because they knew this wasn't war. This wasn't justice. This wasn't revenge. This was correction. And Earth hadn't sent a fleet. They'd sent one man, and he was still coming. The executioner didn't hide in shadows anymore. He was a shadow. On the 5th day after the tribunal broadcast his warning, an entire tribunal war cruiser, the vessel of law, disappeared mid-warp between the Quorn and Seraxi systems. It was a flagship, a floating fortress, boasting enough firepower to raise a planet and enough shielding to survive a starquake. It never made it to Seraxi. Later scan found its shattered remnants orbiting a dead moon, torn in half as if cracked by the hands of a god. No signs of weapon fire. No escape pods. Just fragments of armor, and one frozen body, strapped to the outside hull of what was left of the command bridge. It was Chief Arbiter Solix, the very voice who passed Jace Rourke's sentence. His eyes had been burned out, his hands removed, and yet his lips had been left intact, curled into a silent scream. Etched into his chest with surgical precision were two words. Jace lives. The tribunal denied everything. Official statements called it an engine failure. A hyperspace anomaly. But the galaxy wasn't stupid. The tribunal was bleeding, and no one could stop the cut. One man was doing this. No army. No allies. No threats. Just results. Entire starports went silent when a signal matched his old Earth beacon. Mercenary companies refused payment rather than risk crossing his path. Outer colonies switched allegiance overnight, not out of loyalty, but out of fear. And all the while, he said nothing. No demands. No terms. No treaties. Just blood. He left behind no tech trails, no warp echoes. The only constant was the aftermath. Dismembered elites, disfigured commanders, and empty tribunal strongholds stripped clean like carcasses picked by crows. But this time, they were ready for him. Also they thought. Deep within the celestial rings of Thauron, a gas world spiraling with lightning and gravity storms, the tribunal had built a trap buried within a hidden bastion known only to a handful of galactic counselors. The bastion was called Sanction Black. There, behind layers of time stasis fields and neural scramblers, they stationed the Maw, an ancient weapon designed not to kill, but to unmake, a temporal singularity housed inside a quantum cage, capable of removing anything from existence, past, present, and future. Its activation required unanimous command from 12 living judges. And they waited. 3 days passed. On the 4th, their senses went dark for 2 seconds. Just 2. That was all it took. When power returned, 5 guard were already dead, throats opened, weapons untouched. The executioner stood in the inner sanctum like a statue risen from shadow. No visible entry point. No alarm triggered. The guards fired. He moved. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution. 12 judges activated the Maw. The singularity pulsed, drawing in matter like a black heart. Time distorted. Voices bent backward. The executioner vanished in a flash of stuttering light, drawn into the cage. A pause. Then the judges exhaled. It was done. The universe corrected. The wound sealed until the Maw stopped. Not sputtered. Stopped. Frozen in mid-pull, its interior vibrating with the sound of something resisting from within. And then collapse. The singularity inverted. Screamed. A sound not meant for living ears howled through every system, and the Maw exploded in a column of light and antimatter. When the smoke cleared, he stood there, alive, unburned, breathing. In his hand, something glowed. A chain, twisted, melted at one end. Dog tags, the ones Jace Rourke wore in his final hour. He looked at the surviving judges, those who hadn't been disintegrated by the Maw's rupture, and said, for the second time since this all began, I walked through every version of your justice, and in none of them was he guilty. The eldest judge collapsed. Not from an injury, from fear. You shouldn't exist, one whispered. I don't, the executioner replied. Then he vanished. Just gone. The tribunal's last hope, crushed beneath silence. From that moment, chaos spread like fire through oxygen. Sectors once bound by tribunal order declared neutrality. Some worlds turned to Earth out of desperation. Others prepared their defenses, knowing the executioner was still out there and had no loyalty but balance. A pattern began to form. He wasn't hunting randomly. He was following names. Everyone who'd signed the death warrant for Jace Rourke. Every enforcer. Every diplomat who chose silence. Every system that cast their vote against Earth. Each name marked. Each name erased. But there was more. It wasn't just the kills. It was what he was leaving behind. Messages. All the same. All marked in blood, etched into walls, burned into holes. One for one. Balance is law. You open the door. The tribunal began fracturing from within. Infighting, paranoia. Leaders turned on each other. Some fled to the outer systems. Others went underground, trying to change their names, erase their tracks. None survived. He found them all. And always, he made them watch a playback before death. The execution. The moment Jace Rourke stood on the slab, eyes full of fire, jaw cracked, but silent, he made them watch it. Then he made them answer. One tribunal colonel begged for mercy, said he had a family, said he didn't vote for the execution, that he'd been pressured. The executioner didn't reply. He just dropped the colonel's son's photo beside him and whispered, "So is Jace." Then pulled the trigger. There was no mercy, no forgiveness, no last chances. He wasn't there to make peace. He was there to correct the lie. And in that silence, the galaxy learned a truth long hidden. The tribunal wasn't just flawed. It was rotten. The executioner didn't just shatter their power. He exposed it. And then he sent his final message. A live transmission, undeniable, unstoppable, broadcast across every network, every system, every relay the tribunal still controlled. It showed a face. Jace Rourke. Not the bruised version from the trial. Not the one screaming into silence, but a smiling photo. Earthside, before the war, before the scars, and then the executioner's voice, low and cold. You wanted history to forget him. I won't. You wanted Earth to kneel. We sent me. You took one of ours. He paused. Then, a final whisper. We take everything. Transmission ended, and the hunt continued. He was no longer a man. He was inevitability. And the tribunal was already dead. They just hadn't stopped breathing yet. They thought he was vengeance. But they were wrong. Vengeance burns out. It ends. This didn't. The executioner had become myth in real time. Children whispered his name like a curse. Mercenary bands stopped flying. Even pirates refused to raid Earth-aligned convoys. Not out of respect. Out of survival. By now, they'd stopped calling him human. They called him the Black Law, because wherever he went, there were only two outcomes, obedience or obliteration. But no one expected what happened on Draxia 4. The tribunal had turned Draxia into their fallback throne world, heavily fortified, orbiting a pulsar, bathed in gravitational storms, surrounded by mine rings, satellite cannons, and patrol fleets, 200 ships strong, a fortress within a fortress. It was supposed to be their salvation, their last echo of control, until the sky turned red. They saw the anomaly coming. Small, barely a dot, a ship, a comet, then it stopped, mid-light stream. That was impossible. Objects in faster-than-light travel couldn't just stop. They emerged, decelerated, but this froze, and from it, a signal pulsed. Not a threat, not a demand, a name, Grand Justice Valkyr. Every tribunal channel scrambled. Valkyr hadn't left Draxia in years. He was the oldest living signatory on Jace Rourke's execution writ, a hardliner, a legend, and now he was being called. Security tripled. Guard mechs locked into kill mode. Psychic suites blanketed the spires. Nothing breached the sky, until something did. Not a ship, not a drone, but a man. He fell from orbit like a spear. No pod, no shield, just raw, impossible presence. The moment he struck the plaza, everything within a mile went dark. Gravity faltered. Artificial mind screamed. Troopers dropped to their knees, heads bleeding. And when the smoke cleared, the executioner stood, his coat black with ash, his blade wet with stars. He walked forward, step by step. Nothing could stop him. Valkyr himself descended to confront him, encased in a mechanized suit the size of a house. 30 feet tall, bristling with weaponry, powered by 3 antimatter cores. More god than judge. The executioner didn't flinch. Valkyr spoke, his voice thunder made flesh. You don't understand what's at stake. This war, this balance, you're unraveling more than vengeance. You're breaking the chain that holds reality together. The executioner tilted his head. I'm not here for balance anymore. then leapt. The first strike cracked HFY's shield. The second pierced it. The third went through his shoulder. A guard bled. They fought for 8 minutes. Every second reshaped the plaza. Buildings collapsed. Wind howled from the force of each blow. Tribunal watchers screamed in terror as their strongest warrior was slowly dismantled. And then it ended. HFY on his knees, suit failing, limbs broken. The executioner stood above him, breathing hard, eyes burning, not with rage, but something worse. Revelation. "You signed his death," the executioner said, voice like a blade drawn slowly. "Yes," HFY rasped, "but he was already dying." The executioner paused. "What?" HFY coughed blood. "You think this is about Jace Rourke?" He smiled, broken, bitter. "You don't even know what he was. What you are." Silence. "You were both born on the wrong planet," HFY whispered. "Wrong time." The executioner leaned in, and HFY laughed. "They sent him to die because they couldn't let him live." And then, before another word could leave his mouth, his head exploded. A sniper round. Tribunal signature. Executed by his own people. They weren't protecting him. They were silencing him. The executioner didn't move for 30 seconds. Just stood there, eyes still locked on the corpse. Then, slowly, he looked up and said only one thing. "Now I know." After Draxia, he didn't just hunt Tribunal anymore. He hunted the ones behind them. The architects. No one knew that name before. Now, no one could escape it. They weren't a council. They weren't public. They weren't even a species. They were a function. The untraceable, untouchable hands that steered the Tribunal's rise. Who created the Tribunal not for peace, but for containment. Not to preserve order, but to erase threats before they matured. And Earth had become a threat. Not its armies. Not its weapons. But something deeper. Jace Rourke had been patient zero. A soldier exposed to a weapon during the Silicate Uprising. Something no one understood. It didn't kill him. It changed him. Made him see faster. Move sharper. Think beyond human code. He wasn't evolution. He was mutation. And the architects couldn't allow that. So they used the Tribunal to do what they couldn't do directly. Make an example. Erase a spark before it caught fire. But they failed. Because they underestimated one thing. Jace had a brother, not by blood, but by oath. And when they took Jace, they awakened something worse than fear. They awakened purpose. The executioner infiltrated the Labyrinth Core, a trans-dimensional archive station anchored between 5 realities. It wasn't mapped. It wasn't guarded in the traditional sense. It was alive, protected by non-local defenses and logic-based encryption. No one could enter without collapsing time. He did. They saw him on 12 timelines at once. He walked down holes made of probability, through doors that only existed while being opened. He bled reality, bled it dry, and deep within, he found the seed file, the truth, the list. Not just Jace, others, across worlds, across systems, children erased, soldiers condemned, minds cut open not because they broke rules, but because they bent them. Pioneers, risk-takers, outliers, potential threats. The Tribunal hadn't been protecting peace. They were burning potential. And Earth was different. Earth fought back. That was their crime. That was his reason. When he emerged from the labyrinth, he didn't just carry vengeance. He carried a new mission. Liberation. He broadcast one final message. Not in words, but in a memory. Jace Rourke's last day. His laughter, his strength, the moment he reached out to pull a wounded enemy to safety, the second he stood between a Tribunal cannon and a group of alien children, and then the execution, raw, unedited, unforgivable. The entire galaxy saw it, and the Tribunal, it shattered. Worlds rose up, fleets turned, old enemies allied. The architects went dark, but they didn't vanish. They were still out there, watching, waiting, whispering in the ears of the desperate. And the executioner? He wasn't done. Not yet. He no longer needed to be seen. Because now, The galaxy walked in his footsteps. And in the dark places, where justice failed and truth bled out on metal floors, a symbol would appear, drawn in ash, in blood, in broken circuits. Scales hash. 1 for 1. Balance remains. And behind every scream in the night, every tribunal tower that fell with no warning, every whisper of black footsteps before a tyrant died, there was a rumor. He's still out there. He's still hunting. He's still correcting. Silence had never been so loud. Every major tribunal world had fallen. Their fleets were gone, either scattered, turned, or converted into wreckage orbiting dead moons. Their courtships, bastions, black site prisons, all reduced to dust and myths. What was once the most powerful system of law in known space now whispered through ruins. But one place remained. A black star. It didn't appear on maps. It had no orbit, no location that stayed still. It pulsed between folds of space, shifting coordinates like a heart skips beats. The Nexus Vault, the place where the architects slept, or ruled, or waited. No one truly knew. It wasn't protected by warships or defenses. It didn't need to be. It was wrapped in paradox fields and temporal singularities, the very math of its structure designed to deny entry to anything that didn't already exist within it. Until he came, the Executioner, the last vector of Earth's rage. He didn't bring a fleet. He didn't bring allies. He brought something worse. He brought clarity. When he arrived, the vault screamed, not with sound, but with resistance. Space itself bent. Physics turned away in protest. Time writhed like a wounded animal. The vault knew him, not as a visitor, but as a final consequence of its actions. And yet, he walked through recursive gates, through frozen echoes of failed realities, through corridors made of decision trees and dust. He walked. Each step burned footprints into the floor. He passed a mirror corridor that showed his face as a child, crying in Earth's war zones. He passed another that showed Jace, standing alive, still smiling, still whole. He didn't stop, didn't even flinch. And finally, at the vault's core, he found them. The architects. 6 beings. Not of flesh, not of machine. Something in between. Entities built from collapsed knowledge and weaponized design. They didn't breathe. They calculated. Existence around them bent in symmetrical submission. They were the ones who had condemned Jace. Not from fear, but from certainty. You should not exist, one of them spoke, its voice layered in harmonics no living thing could replicate. And yet I do, the executioner answered, calm, cold, hollow. They studied him. You disrupted equilibrium. No, he said, you made the mistake of defining equilibrium as control. You were a variable. He stepped closer. No, he said again, voice rising like thunder. I was your result. And with that, he threw down the shard, a piece of the labyrinth core. Stolen, infected, rewritten. It pulsed, reality tilted. And suddenly, they felt fear, because for the first time in their infinite observations, they were not the ones watching. The shard bled memories, not data, emotion, Earth's pain, the screams in tribunal prisons, the burning of resistance worlds. The moment Jace was betrayed, not just by a system, but by the silence of an entire galaxy. The architects tried to retreat into code. He followed. What came next wasn't a battle. It was erasure. He didn't kill them. He undid them. Each architect consumed by their own paradoxes, drowned in the truths they had hidden. Children turned into lab subjects, species farmed for psychic anomalies, minds erased before they could imagine rebellion. And in the center of it all, Jace. The spark, the martyr, the blueprint. The final architect screamed, not in fear, but in rage, trying to escape through time itself. The executioner dragged it back by the throat. You created a monster. It rasped. No, he said, pressing his blade against its throat. You created me. And then, in one swift, perfect strike, he cut it into nowhere. The vault collapsed, folded into a singularity, not with fire, but with a breath. And then, silence. Real, complete, earned silence. The galaxy didn't celebrate. It remembered. Tribunal records were unlocked. Every name, every victim, every erased voice restored. Mass grave were exhumed and honored. Cities once leveled rebuilt, brick, by hands that had once feared to speak. Earth rose, not as a conqueror, but as a reminder of what happens when power forgets its answers to the people. And the executioner? He vanished. No funeral, no final message, just stories. Some say he walks among the ruins of old tribunal worlds, helping rebuild with his hands, silent and unseen. Others say he stepped into the black fold behind the vault and never returned. Some claim he was never human at all, that Jace didn't die, that they became one, a force bound by grief, sharpened by injustice, and set loose across a galaxy that forgot what it meant to fear truth. What's certain is this: no tribunal ever rose again. No architect ever whispered from the dark. And whenever systems grew too quiet, too corrupt, too blind, a symbol would appear, burned into the steel of a courthouse wall, carved into the forehead of a warlord, etched into the sky by drones no one could track. Scales hash, and with it, a voice, low, patient, deadly, one for one. Balance's law. You open the door,